First question, Ander Beth. Why do you think it's easier for some people to build muscle than others? Does it always come down to genetics?
Oh, great question, Christina. So, it's funny. Before we talk about genetics, we need to talk about the obvious stuff that I think sometimes people push to the side, and they like to say it's all about genetics. But let's talk about the other
excuses.
Yeah, let's talk about the other factors first. Okay, is the person working out and training in the most appropriate and effective way possible for their body? That's two things there. First, is it an effective workout? And two, is it the most effective workout for their body? Is that person eating a diet that is the most effective for building muscle and appropriate for the body? That's also very, very important. Is the person have a lifestyle that is conducive to building muscle, especially for their body? You got to look at all those those things first before you go on to genetics. As I would have, I knew this growing up, working out, there'd be people around me who'd be building muscle and faster than me. And I think to myself, oh, it must be genetics or it must be steroids.
One or the other.
Yeah. Now that I'm older, looking back, I can see like, oh, that person ate much better than I did, or I didn't prioritize sleep and they did, or I overtrained like crazy and they just focused on the big compound lifts.
It kind of reminds me of like the argument that we're making about the fighting thing, the size and the skill thing, right? Like with a fighter, if you have incredible skills, if you really know the tools that it takes to build muscle, you can compete even with somebody who has great genetics. Mm-hmm. I really feel that way. I think the genetics thing is just a quick excuse that we make because somebody else is responding and we're doing the same thing. So there's those outliers, which everybody has that friend or girlfriend that they know that gets away with eating crappy food, barely touches any weight, and their body looks great. That's such a small percentage of the people.
Great point, because when you look at genetics as a whole with humans, the vast majority of us are somewhere in the middle. Very few of us are on the edges. So it's like a bell curve, right? On the edges, very, very few people. As you get close to the middle, there's a larger amount of people that fit somewhere in the middle. So here's the reality. Truth is, if you look around, most people around you have genetics that are kind of like yours. Most people are somewhere in the middle. It's rare to have these crazy superior muscle building genetics. And trust me, when you meet someone that has these type of genetics, it's not a question. It's not like, hey, he gained 5 more pounds than me. It's more like, wow, he's 270 pounds of muscle. And the guy works out twice a week.
Not to mention, what's the history there? Like, how long have they been in the game? Like, I know a lot of times, like, people have started, when they're like 12 or 13, and like they've built, their body responds because they've built all this in like over decades. And, like for them to see them, they see them just responding, way later in the game, and they don't realize like, this has been a whole history in the making. It's not just like right now.
Well, the truth is, building muscle is hard. It takes consistency. It takes proper nutrition. It takes proper exercise. And the fact is, a majority of people don't have all 3 of those lined up. Most people half-ass their diet. They're not getting all the nutrients they need, and they're asking their body to respond. Most people don't do a very good job with their programming. They gravitate towards a type of modality they enjoy, and as we talk on the show all the time, that's important for consistency. But when trying to build muscle, if you're still doing the Jane Fonda tape at home, and you're wondering why your body's not building more muscle, you're pretty adapted to that. Or you're going to your favorite, Orange Theory F45 class, and you've seen good results in the first 3 to 6 months, but you're not building any more muscle. Well, you're adapted to that way of training. So I think it's more of not all of those things aligning, and most people are missing somewhere there than it is genetics.
I think that's the most common. I don't really think people know how to navigate into other modalities properly. I just don't think that they know other options, well enough. Like they do, like they know they need to up their calories, right? Mm-hmm. That's like the first thing. Like most people are pretty, familiar with that part of it, but people don't adjust their training to match how their body needs to respond. So I think that's something that we need to better educate the general public about. It's
a really easy it's a really easy path, right, to say, oh, it's genetics. We've heard that with fat loss too. I can't lose weight, or I'm overweight and it's because of my genetics. I know my friends don't worry about and here's a funny thing, training clients, you start to have people track and pay attention to certain things, and you start to realize sure, genetics plays a role, but it ain't the role that you used to think. Like, I remember there was a show on, I want to say it was Discovery Channel, where they had people who were like morbidly obese, 400, 500 pounds, right? And they would be part of this reality show, and they would get followed around.
My 600-pound life.
It was one of those.
That was a show.
I think that was. Yeah.
It was something like that, right? And they'd get followed around with the camera. And so before the show starts, you see this interview of the person. And the person's like, yeah, I've been overweight my whole life. I grew up this way. My body stores body fat really easily. It's really crazy. And you kind of hear them making the case for, hey, look, I was born this way and I can't help it. Meanwhile, the camera starts following them around. And then you start to see how they actually eat. And you get to see that for breakfast, it's 5 breakfast sandwiches and a soda. Yeah. Then they have a full-size bag of chips as a snack. And then lunchtime, they go through the drive-thru again. And then dinner, it's like a full size of pizza. Or they go to the grocery store and they're like, this is healthy, right? It's chicken. Meanwhile, it's fried chicken and it's a whole bucket or whatever. Yeah. And you watch and you go, oh, this person just has no idea. Mm-hmm. They actually have no idea what a proper portion looks like, and they're blaming it on genetics. Just like when I was a kid trying to build muscle, I didn't know I thought I was eating enough or more than enough to build muscle. But when I go back and if I really look at the calories and grams of protein and all that stuff, it wasn't enough. I remember learning this when my parents went to Italy one year for, I think it was like a month and a half or 2 months. I was staying at my grandma's house, and obviously I have an Italian grandma, so she'll make me whatever I want. And so she's like, what do you want to eat? And I said, I love steak. Make me a lot of steak. So when I lived at my grandma's house, she made me steak 2 or 3 times a day. So 2 or 3 times a day, I'd have steak, and I'd have pasta or whatever. And I remember over that course of that month and a half, I was gaining muscle like I'd never gained before. And then I pieced it together, and it's like, oh, it's because my grandma's feeding me steak all the time. So genetics definitely play a role, but it's not the role that you think for the most part. Now, that being said, when you get to the sides, when you get to the outliers, well, yeah, then genetics get pretty crazy. Now, I've worked in fitness for 20 years, so there's already a bit of a selection bias. So the type of people that are attracted to fitness, the type of people that work into fitness, you're probably already dealing with a level of genetics that's a little bit better than average, right? Most of these people they're drawn to it because they're good at it. So there's already a bit of a selection bias. But I can count on one hand how many people I met in 20 years working in fitness, looking back, that I could say had insane genetics.
Yeah, I agree.
You know what I'm saying?
This also goes back to the argument that we had the other day about, or debate that we were talking about, which is harder to build muscle or burn body fat. I think to build muscle, this also brings up another point of how there's less room for error. If you are trying to burn body fat, just moving, doesn't matter what modality, how consistent you've been doing, just moving a lot and eating less, and you'll lose body weight. That's just, and you can get away with continuing to push that, right? More extreme. You don't need as much programming specifics. Right. That's what I mean. And you'll still see results. I mean, you could just run in place, and eat less every single day and increase that intensity week over week. And then you'll see the decrease in body fat and body weight. But with building muscle, it's you can't just, if you overdo it like crazy and you're not feeding correctly, you're going to see no results. So you could be putting in a ton of work inside the gym, not fueling the body nutritionally to support all that extra work, and your body won't build shit. In fact, a lot of times you may even lose weight in pursuit of building muscle. So I think there's a sweeter spot when trying to build, which makes it feel like it's more challenging, and then again defaulting to, oh, I'm just fucked, I have bad genetics, and my friend has got great genetics. It's less often that, and it's more addressing some of these.
Or they're not really isolating that's very specific goal of building muscle. They're not willing to then take down a lot of the extracurricular, like cardiovascular type activity that they have incorporated in their plan because it makes them feel good.
Well, I remember, and there's been several times in my lifting career where I had these moments where I thought I was doing everything right, and then I made this one little change, and all of a sudden I add 10 pounds of muscle after like beating my head against the wall for 2 years straight, right? Yeah. 2 years straight, thinking I know everything about lifting and I'm doing everything right nutritionally. And then one day it dawns on me, and I don't remember what, I either read something or somebody told me.
Got more sleep or something.
Well, I was, back off the basketball. I was playing basketball every single day in addition to lifting every single day, and I just couldn't keep up with the calories. And I thought because I was stuffing my face, I was eating enough, and so just me like cutting out basketball, and all of a sudden my body goes boom, 10 pounds like came on me overnight. And it was like, oh shit, like that was a big difference for someone like me who, again, was probably blaming it on genetics for the first half of my lifting.